Hey folks, a quick little bonus video here for you. I got something in the mail today that I thought I would share with you all, so we've got a bit of an unboxing and a little bit of a review as well. This is the Game Envy Exemplar wet palette. It is a Kickstarter that I backed a little while ago. I just received it and I thought I'd share it all with you. Now, I don't have any connection with Game Envy. This is not a promotional piece. I am just an average consumer that picked it up because I quite liked the look of it from what I'd seen. And maybe I'll like the real product too. Let's find out. Let's quickly flip it over. And here we have some exciting paper. One wet palette. Along with some sponges and some papers by the looks of it. And a few extra goodies. So let's take a closer look. Alright, so I went with the black model because black is the best of all colors. Inside we have a tray. We've got a good rubber seal in the lid, so hopefully it stays airtight. We also have a air vent that you can pop open and closed. And this is the thing that really won me over on picking this up versus the wet palette I have at the moment. A small set of dry palettes that you can use for oils or for dry brushing or contrast paints or whatever if you want to pour them out, and for storing your brushes in as well. So that is the container, and then in here we have a little plastic squeegee, I guess, for helping get rid of the air bubbles under your palette paper. A sticker that will go on my table stickers. We've got, ooh, another shiny sticker. A little bit of paper. I'm going to have to research what this is for. Some coppery strip. I suspect this is to help prevent odor buildup, but I'll double check that as well. Game Envy card. And then in here looks to be pre-cut palette papers. They look nice and thin. They've got no colouring on them, so that's nice. They'll reflect the colour that you're painting with pretty accurately, hopefully. And a couple of sponges. These are very, very fine texture sponge. I'm curious to see how much water they hold. So I will put all of this together, and then I will come back with a little bit of a test scenario. Okay, so I'm back, and a little bit of research, and what I found out was that big piece of white sponge is actually for using as a brush blotter, which is quite a nice idea. I'm not sure how well it will work, but what I've done is I've gone and cut it up into sizes to fit inside this little insert here. So just storing them all in there for the moment. The Exemplar plastic for getting rid of air bubbles, is the squeegee is also sized to fit in there, which is quite nice. But I think the real test is to see how this performs. So the copper is adhesive backed, so I've just stuck that into one side, and I've got our sponge on top of it. This is the bottle I use to keep clean water on hand, so we're just going to pour a little bit in. It seems pretty nice and absorptive. See how that goes. Put a bit more in. Maybe see if the squeegee will move it. Well, not so much. Okay, but it's quite a lot of water going into this, so that's nice. I like a sponge that's capable of holding a lot of liquid without it kind of seeping onto the palette paper too extensively. So just smooth that around. Get some good coverage. Maybe a little bit too much. We'll just pour the excess back into the water container. And there we go. So with that, I'll just pop in our palette paper. Squeegee out some air bubbles. Got a little bit of paper coal, that's normal. Let it soak through properly. Okay, paper in. You can see the discoloration from the copper, so I'm glad I set that to one side so that it's not going to discolor the whole palette and I can focus mostly over on here. So we've got a couple different paints of different consistencies here that I'm going to try out. This is a heavy body acrylic, yellow ochre from Golden. We've got a little dollop of Pro-Acryl Bold Titanium White. So we'll try that as well. We'll try a little bit of the eponymous GW. Got some Death Guard green here. So take a little dollop of that as well. And we'll try a little bit of Vallejo Model Color and Vallejo Air line as well. So this is the Pale Blue from Model Air. And then one of my favorite colors, Livery Green from Vallejo Game Color. So we'll try those, see how they go on the palette. You know what? We should also try some acrylic ink. Acrylic inks have a habit of bleeding through some palette papers, so this will be a good test for that as well. So I'll pop them in there. I'm actually going to leave these for a little while and see how they do, but just tease them out a little bit. Quite a bit of beading on the surface of the palette paper. It's not a big problem, but it's going to make it a little bit harder to work with glazes. Pro-Acryl next. Yeah, you can see it's a little tricky to move that on. And then finally the heavy body acrylic, the ochre there. So that's the palette paper. Very good moisture content. So what I'm going to do now is pop the lid on this and leave it for a little while and come back to it in a bit and see how we're doing. So, lid on. We'll leave the vent closed and we'll come back a little later on. Alrighty, well, it's been a couple of hours, so let's see how the wet palette is holding up. Obviously, this is not like an overnight test or something, but there we have our test colors. As you can see, there's been a little bit of moistening of some of the paints. They've gotten a little thinner, in fact all of the paints by the looks of it, so moisture is clearly coming up through the palette to a small degree. Some color separation, particularly on the Vallejo, which is kind of a known thing with Vallejo colors. And then with this we can kind of just see how those paints are holding up. So paint on just a thin little coat here, quite thin, just wick off some of the moisture. Oh, it's still got good coverage and a nice flow to it. So that was the Model Air. That already starts life as a pretty thin paint. Try the yellow ochre. So this, compared to the heavy body as it comes out of the tube, it has thinned quite a bit, so we'll try a little bit of this on the rope. I'll put some still photos up and link to them so that you can kind of compare. This has thinned quite considerably actually. Coverage is less than I would typically expect for a heavy body acrylic like this. Try a little bit of white highlight. Yeah, it's still got good opacity and good coverage. This is the Pro Acryl. That's pretty good. Alright, next up we've got a little bit of Death Guard green. I'm going to try picking out a couple scales with that. So I'll go for some scales on the spine. Again, pretty thin, seems to have thinned down. And now this may be just because I'm still getting used to the wet palette, that the sponge may actually be a little oversaturated with water, and that's why it's accelerating that bleed, and that's likely something that I'll adjust to as I use the palette some more. Yeah, a couple coats and you've got good coverage there. So we have it. Alright, and one last thing to check, of course. I'll just remove this palette paper quickly. We want to check just how waterproof this is. So this is kind of loaded up with the moisture we typically expect, you know, to have at the end of a session, everything closed up. Well, it's definitely watertight, there's no water coming out there. open it back up, you can see water made it onto the lid, but didn't get past that watertight seal. And inside the palette looks just as it did before. Obviously, if you were to do that with the palette paper with paint on it, you probably would be seeing some paint flying around in here, mixing on that palette paper, probably staining the lid of your palette. But if you take that out before you travel, you're fine, even if it's still wet inside. So there you have it. That is the Game Envy Exemplar wet palette. I'm pretty pleased with the product. It is everything that I was expecting. It matches very closely to the test units that I'd seen around the place that friends have been given. In fact, I think it's safe to say that the production version is actually better in several little ways than those test ones that I saw. It has some really nice features. Obviously, being watertight is very nice if you're ever traveling, if you're going to a convention, or if you're going over to friends or a hobby night at your local game store. It has that little palette space at the top where you can also store brushes potentially. I do really like that feature as well as the air vent hole is quite a nice touch as well, just to help with controlling that moisture and potentially, slowing the drying of the palette paper, but without risking thinning your paints, as we saw in the test that I did. So there you have it. That is the Exemplar wet palette system by Game Envy. The recommended retail price, I do not know, but as I'm saying this, looking clueless, I'm sure it's going to be popping up on screen somewhere and telling you all how much it is meant for retail. Thanks as always, folks, for watching. If you would like more of this content, please do consider subscribing. I have a live stream every week and a video every week. And if you click that notification bell, you will get notified about those when they go up. Also, if you feel like liking this video or you want to throw something in the comments, please do those things as well. As always, I'm at Raggy Paints on Instagram. You can check me out there to see what I've been working on lately. But for now, later days.